This is Bill Sang, the author of the GIGANOTUS Rex series. You can find links to purchase the GIGANOTUS Rex books at williamhsang.com, and Sang is Seng, or you can go to amazon.com. You can find books there. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this podcast. Enjoy the show. The Wrath of GIGANOTUS Rex by Bill Sang. Chapter 3, The Raid. I took a personal shuttle over to the village. Our shuttles need no pilot. Each city only had a limited number of shuttles available. The resources required to operate the shuttle system were of the highest value, thus only the most important people were granted regular access. In this respect, I was very fortunate. We program our destination into the unit, and it takes us wherever we desire, using the most time-efficient route. This suited me well because I like to relax on my journeys. Far too many people that I know stress out over what they will do when they arrive at their destination. Not me. I like to be nice and loose when I arrive. There is enough to worry about once you get there, and nothing ever goes according to plan. We call this city a village. When you think of a village, you might think of a very small population center where people live in homes, scattered throughout a plot of land. Here, the villages are more densely populated than the big cities. The villages are for those who have the lowest level jobs. They devote their time to producing food, clothes, and to all of the necessities that those in the big city don't have time to concern themselves with. I was traveling to the village of Orwell. It's a couple of hours away from Midland, and the village rumored to be mounting a rebellion against the rulers. In this village, their main focus was producing food through agriculture and livestock. Few people ever visited the villages. You might say that city folk are scared of them. People of the villages did not have a reputation for being intelligent or reasonable. Stories were always circulating about how they hated people from cities. So, when someone visits a village, he or she does so quietly and as invisibly as possible. I arrived at a time when nobody would notice, 2 hours before sunrise. This way, I would avoid causing undue ruckus if a rebellion was brewing. Within a village are secret housing units that are reserved by cities in case it was necessary for an agent to visit. The population was so incredible in these communities that it was difficult to notice a new face. This was my first time out to a village, so I had to pay close attention to my directions. When I arrived at my room, I was well rested. This was one of the benefits of resting while traveling. Once you arrive at your destination, you have the energy to get right to work. When the sun came up, I began to document my assignment. I like to use the traditional method of using a voice recorder. This is William Stevens. It is just a little after 6 a.m., and, to my surprise, the villagers have been awake for about an hour. My mission is to gather as much information as possible about any potential revolt without stirring suspicion. Wish me luck. Why did I say wish me luck? I'm not sure. I figured if something did happen to me and all anybody found of me was this recording, it might sound more dramatic to finish it that way. Around 7 a.m., the villagers began to break from their chores. I followed them as they gathered toward the town square. It appeared to be some sort of a bizarre tradition. The men, women, and children all gathered. An aged fellow stood before the people upon an elevated stage and began to talk. Fellow Orwellians, today we have much to be thankful for. Let us bow our heads and give thanks for this new day. The people all bowed their heads, and I could hear them muttering. I could not figure out what they were saying, just vague utterances of thanks. Once the people were finished, the man began to speak again. Good men and women, do not fear what trials may befall us this day. He was interrupted as the gathering of people was suddenly surrounded by 100 soldiers who filed into the area where the meeting was being held. The people began to talk among themselves. Fear gripped them as they huddled together in an effort to protect one another, keeping women and children toward the center of the gathering. The people seemed to not know what to think, nor did I. This was an unexpected occurrence that I could not explain. No one had informed me of a dispatch of soldiers that were to occupy Orwell. Typically, a reporter would be made aware of such an event. An officer stepped forward from among the troops who surrounded the Orwellians and began to speak. "Villagers of Orwell, do not be afraid. We are here in the name of peace and the benevolent Green Gate. We must conduct an investigation of each and every one of you for reasons we cannot disclose. Please make your way." An explosion interrupted the man's statement. I looked up. A building in the distance was on fire. Loud artillery shots erupted on the outskirts. People began screaming and running in terror, but no one knew what was happening. The soldiers turned and ran in the direction of the explosion. A woman fell as she was running past me. She cried as I helped her up. She clutched my shoulders in terror and asked, "Why are they doing this?" "Doing what?" I asked. I ran towards the edge of the village where the chaos was breaking out. The streets were clear as the people hid. I followed at a distance behind the soldiers to see where they were going. The noise of the artillery and machine guns became so loud it was deafening. I saw a tank positioned in the street preparing to fire. As I drew closer, it was clear that it was not responsible for the explosion. The military was not firing upon the city. Something else had drawn their attention. The firing stopped momentarily, but the ground began to rumble. At this time, I stood about 50 yards from the soldiers, who I was following, as the ground gave out and the earth swallowed them up. Their screams were brief and abruptly cut off. I could see the wreckage of several military vehicles that had met their fate before I had arrived. Buildings on the edge of the village had caught fire, but it appeared to only be affecting the borders. They had lost their target. The ground continued to rumble. Two choppers hovered, as though in search of something. They circled around an enormous crater. They slowed, descended, and shined their lights into its depths. All of a sudden, the rumbling of the earth became even more violent. About 100 yards away from the helicopters, a tank was swallowed by the ground. Dust flew into the air as the helicopters and other artillery vehicles unleashed a hailstorm of firepower on the area where the tank once rested. At first, it appeared as though their target was invisible, but something emerged from the ground. Explosives burst upon impact with the target. It took one direct hit after another and appeared to be completely unfazed. As a dark silhouette rising from the fiery pit, he appeared. Flames and smoke were at his feet, rising and engulfing him as he stared down at those who fired their weapons. The glow of his eyes penetrated through the smoke and darkness. His judgment had been cast upon those who were assaulting him. The Leviathan belched out an inferno of hot, red fire that engulfed the forces nearest to him. As the heat of his attack consumed them, he stepped through the smoke and revealed his identity. It was a massive reptile, bipedal, with sharp teeth. His back and underbelly were as black as charcoal, while the rest of his body was as green as pine needles. On his back protruded a single row of dorsal spines that resembled railroad spikes packed together tightly. His head was similar to that of a Tyrannosaurus rex, but its arms were long and muscular. He roared in triumph as the ground vehicles disintegrated into ash. He then began to pursue the helicopters, which had apparently exhausted their ammunition supplies. He caught one by the tail and bit it off. The helicopter was sent into a nosedive to the ground. The sight of its explosion was disturbing. The other helicopter had enough of a head start to escape. The monster stood amid the flames of his adversaries. He surveyed his handiwork and was satisfied. After looking back towards the village, he stared with what appeared to be a diabolical smile on his face. It was as though he was saying, "Rest easy tonight, for I have spared you this day. What fate holds for you tomorrow, who can say?"